Hi everyone, it's Jackie at Spare Room Studio. Today I'm going to colour this picture, Lady Witch, and it is out of Christine Karron's Wildflower Folk, and I plan to use watercolour for this one. If I need to, I will bring in some coloured pencil or something at the end, but I'm hoping to do a watercolour for this one. It is a buddy colour with Kate over on Instagram. I can't remember your Instagram handle, Kate, but I will put it in the description box. And I've got the Sakura Koi watercolour pocket sketch box. And I've got some different Gansai Tambi paints out here as well. And I thought I was set up, but I realised that I have forgotten some palettes. Sorry about that. So I have some palettes here in case I need to mix any colours up. Let's get a slightly cleaner one, might look nice. I have pre-wet my paints, just putting a little drop of water on them. I don't know if that's showing up, to try and reconstitute them a little bit. And yeah, hopefully I'm ready now and we'll get started. I'd hope to not bang around too much and see if I can get that to lock in. Make too much noise, but I am still getting used to my setup here. So I've got a mixture of water brushes and regular brushes, and I've got a pot of water, and I thought to start with today, for something a bit different, I might try wetting with the regular brush first, and then if I need to change over to the water brushes, I've got all of it nearby, hopefully to hand, and hopefully I am reasonably organised with what I think I might need. So let's jump in. So first off, I like to wet the paper, as you know, if you've been watching me for any length of time. I do prefer to wet the paper first, and I'm just going to really lightly wash in some colour first. I'm hoping to keep this pretty light and fresh and airy if I can, because it's actually spring where I live. While we celebrate, well, we don't really celebrate Halloween, but while Halloween happens here in Australia, it's actually spring. So I thought that I might try and keep this one pretty light and easygoing. In fact, I might go over those and I can just bring in a bit of red later, or whatever colour I decide that I want that to be. And so what I'm doing is I'm just putting a little bit of water into this little palette well here, and then just really diluting that colour down, because to start with I want it to be pretty pale. And then what I can do is just pick up a little bit out of the palette, the actual watercolour pan, and then where I want a bit of extra colour, I can just touch the tip of the brush into the wet paper and add the colour that way. So I don't really want, again, I'm not going for a very tightly detailed watercolour look. I want to have areas where I keep some nice loose washy, messy even areas, I guess you could say. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of the next darker colour, which is more of a bluey green now, and I'm just going to touch that in. Got too much on my brush, so I'm just going to try and lift some of that away. And this is what happens when you get too close to very wet areas is, of course, the colour will keep running and blending. So this brush is a rather large brush, so I won't give you the colours, I don't think, for this one. I don't want it to be like a colour along. I can give you the numbers. It's 092, this darker green, and the lighter green is 114. Because watercolour sets are going to be really different, I can grab the box and let's see if I can easily see what the colours are. Okay, so 114 is permanent green pale and 092 is viridian hue. So that's the two colours. I'm just going to put some plain, clean water just to get a few different watercolour effects where we'll get a little bit of a watermark and a hard edge happening. But yeah, I don't really want this to be a tutorial as such. I want you to just sort of look at the techniques that I'm using and how I'm describing what I'm doing and maybe have a go yourself. But it doesn't matter what colours you use, because you could be listening to this in the background while you're colouring a completely different image with completely different colours. So I sort of want these videos to be a little bit instructional, but in a very loose manner. I don't want you to feel like you have to have the same book, the same colours, the same paints, or whatever. What I would like you to be able to do is to take these techniques that I'm using and put them into any book, any palette of colours that you have, and turn it into your own. So really I just sort of want to share the techniques, I guess, is what I'm trying to say with this one. More so than you trying to copy the picture and create the same thing, exactly the same thing yourself. So while that's still damp, I'm just dropping that slightly darker colour into the damp areas to bleed out, and we'll let that do its own thing now. So that brush was far too big. I'm going to get myself one of my water brushes that I like. That one might be a good one. And I'm thinking like she's a hedge witch, or something to do with plants and growing things and herbal medicines and so on, maybe. So I'm thinking that's what my colour palette is going to be influenced by. Now this ribbon here, I've used very wet paint here, a lot of water up here, and then I picked up the lighter colour again, but I didn't dilute it very much at all, so that's much more undiluted pure colour. And I'm just going to let the two blend on the paper there. And I think we'll go down to her bodice next. Now I think this bit here would be like a sheer fabric. Then she's got the bodice, and that will be floaty. Maybe not so much. This would be quite sheer as well. So it's quite a complicated outfit in terms of it could be lots of different types of fabric. So I'm going to go for 116 now, which is Permanent Green Deep. And I'm not mixing any colours as yet, I'm just using them straight off of the watercolour pans. And then I will mix when I see fit. So I wet the bodice area first, and then I've just touched that bit of colour in, and I'm encouraging it to come down and be a little bit lighter in the depth of the colour down the bottom there. And I'm going to mix a little bit of the Permanent Green Deep, this darker one, and I'm going to mix a little bit of a yellow in there to make it less blue. So I think I'll use the 052, which is lemon yellow. Just got to get my brush a bit cleaner so I can pick up some of that. So I'm going to put the yellow into that little well there. And that's a bit of dirty water there. I'm going to pick up a little bit of the green. So I'm picking up a little bit of both of those, and I want to try and do some areas that are not so blue-green base there. And I'm going to bring that colour into this part of the sleeves for now. And then I'm going to pick the darker one up that hasn't been mixed. Just let that bleed along the areas where I think that there might be a little bit of a darker shadowy area. Christine has very slightly indicated where the edge of the arm would be inside of this. It looks like it would be a sheer fabric on the arms, so you can actually see the shape of the arm underneath. And so I've just used a little bit of darker along that edge there. So we go back to this lighter mix that I mixed up. And that's straight onto dry paper there. So I just keep mixing things up around the page. So the aim for me is to never have the whole page done exactly the same way, because I feel like that starts to get a little bit stale and boring. So, you know, some areas I'm going to want some smooth sort of blending. Other areas I'm going to want it all washy and different types of effects and so on. And I tend to go on instinct rather than thinking it through too much, and that only really comes from painting a lot and working out what your likes and your dislikes are. There's really no way of learning that other than by doing. So you need to take the time to work with a medium to really know what it's capable of and what it's not capable of doing and so on, so that you've got that knowledge there is in your brain, that you start to just do things on autopilot and instinct rather than overthinking things too much. Alright, so because I work quite wet, I have to allow myself a bit of time in between for things to dry. Now going back to that lighter mix, which was the Permanent Green Deep with a bit of permanent green pale. Let's go back up to here and we'll do this quite light as well. So a little reminder that when you're working with watercolour, you want to go light to dark. You don't ever want to start with your darks. You want to do light washes and build the colour up. And if you feel like you'd like a white area, so say for example here where I've not really allowed the white of the paper to show, you would preserve the white of the paper, and you can use masking fluid and other methods to do that. And what I'm doing here now is when I've forgotten to leave a highlight and a shadow, I'm actually using a clean dry brush to go back and lift some of that colour back off. Now this is quite undiluted pure colour here, and I'm going to just drop that into some areas where I'd like it a little bit darker, and I'm going to let that bleed. Clean my brush off, and because that's a bit too much, I'm now going to spread that with the clean brush into those folds in the sleeve. Now you can wait, or you probably should wait, for each layer to dry thoroughly and come back and lay your layers of washes on top of each other. But I'm far too impatient for that, so what I've done over the years is I just have worked out that I like to do this when it's just damp. I still like to keep putting the different layers on and letting it bleed, because I do like the randomness of that look over finely blended washes of colour a lot of the time. So I don't wait, I dive in. But if you want to paint with watercolours in a technical, correct manner, you should be waiting for your washes to dry in between and then layer the colour up that way. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm cleaning my brush off. I've got the clean damp brush here again, and I'm just going to push some of that colour back out of there where I've gone a little bit dark. And if you can learn to sort of do these things in one pass without playing with, messing around with it too much afterwards, you're going to do far less damage to your paper. So the less messing around and playing about with it on the paper you can do, the better it is for the surface of the paper, and you're not going to damage the paper, especially because this isn't watercolour paper. Watercolour paper is a little bit more hardy, but this is the dangers or the pitfalls I have by choosing to work in the manner that I do, is that I will, invariably damage the paper a little bit. I might cause some pilling or, whatever. But that's sort of something I'm willing to do because that's just my preferred way of working. Okay, so that's all the greens. Maybe just this little choker around her neck here. We'll do quite dry. So by that I mean this colour hasn't been diluted, it's not very wet, and I'm doing it onto dry paper. So that might imply that it's more of a solid piece of fabric, like a ribbon that might be made of velvet or velour maybe, rather than the floaty, you know, fabric that I'm trying to describe down here. And I'm just going to get a little bit more of that darker colour, and I'm going to put a little bit more into parts of the ribbon. Just to give that a little bit more definition as well, because I'd like that ribbon to be quite solid and more sturdy looking than this fabric down here might be. And you know, keep in mind, if your fabric is shiny, whether it's going to be reflecting some light, you need to allow some light and dark for that to be implied as well. So now I'm going to just very carefully try and blend that over without too harsh a line, because I feel like this would be quite sturdy, firm fabric here as well on the bodice. Okay, so there's not much more I can do with that until it has dried. I think I'd like to give her some lovely red hair, because I think with, or auburn, because I think with that green it will look really nice. So I'm going to use a bit of light red, which is 197, that's that colour there. So I'm just going to put a bit of that in there. And 194 is burnt umber, so for some shadows and deeper colour. And then I'm also going to use some yellow ochre, which is 071, and I'm going to put that into there. Now I should wait for the green to be completely dry, of course, but for the sake of the video I'm going to jump in a little bit sooner. And I'm just going to try and stay away from the very wet areas. And I just started there with the light ochre. Now this is light red. And Christine has put quite a lot of detail in here already for us to use for working out where to establish shadows and light spots. So when you're working in this book, you know, a lot of that information's already there for you to help you make the decisions where to put the highlights and so on. So I hope this video finds you all well. I have been working every day just about to get things organised in my room that I'm calling my spare room studio. And very excited. I've got a nice comfy office chair through IKEA the other day. So I can sit here at my table really easily now, which is great. And I've been putting stuff away hopefully into places that are functional and useful. My son did come and get pretty much the rest of his clothing and things out of the drawers and so on in this room, so I'm glad that I didn't rush out to buy new furniture, because I feel like I've probably got enough, and while it's a little bit mismatched, I think over the summer I might have a few little projects to work on where I can resand and possibly restain or paint some of the items so that they all fit in together a little bit better. I did mention on another video that while it's not vital that you have furniture in your creative space that's all matching and perfect, to be comfortable and aesthetically pleasing is important to me, because if it isn't, if I feel like it's not a very pretty place to come and sit and relax, then I won't. I'll go and sit elsewhere and I won't come into the room, and that defeats the whole purpose of wanting to have this room. So it is important to me, while it's not vital, and it certainly won't make me create any differently or better, I will certainly want to spend more time in here if I feel like the surroundings are comfortable and pretty. So I've got things to a point where I'm really happy at the moment to just sit down and start creating in here, with the knowledge at the back of my mind that I will eventually get around to working on some of the furniture. And we still do have a day bed here in the room that I'm using, so that's taking up a lot of space. And when it's quite clear that my granddaughter's happy and settled in going to her father's new place, I will attempt to sell her bed, and I'll move the day bed into her room, and she can use the day bed to sleep on if she stays over with us. But at this point in time, I felt it was really important that things stay pretty constant and regular in her room, so she didn't feel that it wasn't her room anymore, because it's quite an adjustment for her to go and spend time with her dad in this different place, because all she has ever known for her access visits is coming here to this house, and my husband and I being here. So she loves her dad, but it's just that she's used to us being around when it's her weekend to come and spend time with her dad. So I'm really conscious that I wonder if that's ribbon or hair there. I might do it as hair. It's really important that there is some stability still for her. Whilst the change is happening, she knows that everything here is going to stay the same. And that's really important to us. So, that's how I will be tackling that particular situation. And you never know, it might actually become so nice to be in this room, I might feel like having a little afternoon nap on the bed every now and again. Okay, we're half an hour in and I feel like I'm not making fast progress, but we'll see how things pick up. So I'm liking that colour for her hair, especially for a first pass. And I think I might do a bit of background now while I wait for that to dry. Or shall I do some skin? I'll do some skin. So I'm going to start with yellow ochre for the base for her skin. I'm envisaging that she is a hedge witch, or you know, a herbal witch or something like that. She's going to be spending a lot of time outside gathering her supplies. And I also feel like she's very much representing the earth element, and as such, you know, the earthy colours are perfect for her. And I think that she would be nicely tanned or gently tanned because she's got red hair. So yellow ochre is not a bad starting point, and this will dry a little bit lighter as it dries. So I'm just going to try and leave the tiniest little bit of white highlight on the edge there. Christine has indicated some grayscale here, and that's where I'm going to keep all my yellow ochre for now, preserving that white highlight for as long as I can. And if I feel at the end that that white highlight is too stark, I can always knock it back with a little bit of colour right at the end. But if I cover the white highlights up completely now, I leave myself with not too many options other than reintroducing some white, or you know, a white pencil or something, which is going to be much more opaque. And for skin, you know, it's nice if you can try and keep it fresh and with a sense of lightness rather than being too heavy. So I'm only using the tiniest bit on my brush that's diluted. It's not pure from out of the paint pan. And as I'm working, that's getting lighter and lighter. So if you could keep that in mind, start at a point where it might be more shadowed and then work towards where it might be lighter. And it just naturally gets lighter because you're using, well, in this case, a water brush. The further that I work with it, the more pale it becomes. So I've made things really pleasant for myself in here. I discovered that a electric diffuser that I thought that I had gotten rid of, I was actually stored away. So I've dug that out, and I've currently got some lovely lavender oil in there just for a little bit of calming. And I love the scent of lavender. It's one of my favourite smells. And I've also got some candles lit because whilst I don't need it for the light, I like having flickering candles on standby. You know, when I'm creating, I find it just induces a sense of calm and relaxation for me, which is all part of the experience of being creative that I'd like to foster. And I've taken a photograph before I got started, and I'll put it up on the community tab, or maybe it will be the photo at the beginning for the thumbnail for the video. But yeah, again, it's all things that you don't need to create, but it helps to build an atmosphere where you want to be, or I want to be anyway. It helps me set a tone and a mood for how I'd like my creative time to feel. And whilst none of it is really required, it's very pleasant. And while my granddaughter was around the house so much, I put anything to do with candles and matches and lighters and all that sort of thing well out of curious fingers. So I wasn't actually using it much. Even when they weren't here, I just had everything stored away somewhere where Evie wouldn't easily find them, which then meant that, for me to get it out when they weren't here was a bit of a chore. So I've rediscovered some of those things, and I don't know if you will hear the diffuser in the background, but it's making a nice little sort of trickling noise. So that's relaxing. And I've got a few CDs that I like to listen to when I don't really want to concentrate. So I've got a few sort of instrumental type CDs, and I like the music of Enya for when I'm creating, because I don't actually want to sort of think about or listen to the words. I just want to enjoy the music. So that's why I find that sometimes instrumental music is really nice to have. And I'm just going to blend that out because that is far too dark. So let me know what you do when you're creating. If you've got the opportunity, like I realise that some of you are experiencing things in your life where you don't have the luxury of having the space to yourself, and I fully understand that, having just come from that myself. But if you have a dedicated creative space, let me know what you do. Do you have any little rituals, so to speak, where you, maybe light a candle or have a favourite scent or music? Do you have the TV going? I quite often like to have a YouTube video on while I'm creating. If it's not music, then I do like to listen. There's certain people and channels that I like to listen to rather than watch. So, and I just look up occasionally when they say something that piques my interest. And I'm very interested in, at the moment, watching urban explorers, and also people who are doing paranormal investigations, looking for evidence that there is, life after death, and that they go to these abandoned houses and then see if there's any evidence they can record, and I just find it really interesting, you know, the things that some people do. And I don't always necessarily believe 100% in it, but I still find it really fascinating. Okay, so she's starting to come along nicely, I think. And I'm going to use a little bit of that darker colour, which was the light red, and maybe put little touches of that into her skin in different parts. Now the edging on her outfit, I want that to be a pale green. So I want to use the permanent green pale, very, very lightly diluted. Sorry, when I say lightly diluted, I mean I want the colour to look very light. And I just want that to go in this middle section. And I think the edges of that at the moment I'll leave white, and if I don't like the way that looks, I can come back in later and add something to that. And I'm going to use that light green along there as well. So that might be all I can really do for the time being. Let's have a look how she's looking. I hope the lighting is okay, guys. Yeah, let's do some background behind her. And I'm going to try and do a few different greens and yeah, greens, but I'm going to go for olive green to start with, I think. Olive green, and then I might bring some Payne's grey into it. Okay, so this is olive green here. And I want it quite a bit more diluted than that. And I'm going to just start, I want a random background. I don't want it to actually look like anything as such, but just random colour and light and dark. And I'm going to have to take my little clip off that I've got up there. Just bring that down a little bit for the time being. So be careful if you're doing something like this and you're holding your palette over the book, because it would be very easy to spill it or drip, you know, directly onto your picture, which would be a shame at this stage of the proceedings. So it's quite diluted, the colour's not very dark at all. It almost looks like a dirty tea colour. So I'm going to get a little bit on my brush that isn't diluted, and I'm going to swirl that about. And I'm also going to get some Payne's grey now, which is 231. And I'm also going to put a little bit of that into areas as well. And I've accidentally gone over her hat there. A bit of a steady hand needed when you're going around these tricky little areas. I'm going to go back to the olive green. I've just mixed a little bit of Payne's grey in there by accident, but that's okay. And I'm going to drop that into the areas that were just done with the grey. And what I'm doing there is I'm looking for some of it to create a bit of colour separation maybe. I haven't used those two colours before from this set, so I don't know if it will do that or not, but that's kind of what I'm looking for it to do, and mixing in together like there. But now I want to leave around there a little bit of clean paper, because I don't know how I'm going to do the glow around what she's got in her hands just yet. So I don't want a straight line there, so I'm trying to encourage it to bleed down into an irregular looking edge there. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of the olive green undiluted and just try and deepen that colour up a little bit there. It was looking a little bit too pale and wishy-washy. And what I'm thinking with these little, I don't know if they're berries or they might be white flowers, I'm happy to just come back with the white acrylic paint pen to do those. So there's no point trying to go all the way around them, which is ridiculous. I'll just watercolour over them and then do the white acrylic paint pen. And the same with her hair. When it's pale, you know, like very diluted, and it's light, it's not going to affect her hair colour too much, so I'm not being too careful at going around all of those areas there. So just to mirror some of the shapes that I've got over that side, I don't want it to be you know, symmetrical, but we'll mirror some of the shapes so that it's got some sort of continuity to it. And let's come back in now that we've got all that established and just put a little bit of darker colours into different areas. Bearing in mind that we can always darken up later, we just don't want to go too dark too soon. So if anywhere looks like it's too solid and boring, you can put some clean colour into the clean water into there, or you know, do a few sort of splatters, like, and let them bleed. So how's that looking? Probably looks like a mess at the moment, but I think as we get her defined better, then all of this background, you know, like it won't be detracting, it will just be a background. Now that's just gone into the crease of the book there, which I was hoping not to do, but a wise person would put some washi tape or something along there to stop that happening, but I've never professed to be a wise person. So some of those very wet bits I'm just going to, and I'm going to just do a few dobs and dabs to get some different texture going maybe. And I did think about maybe putting some salt onto here, but I've made it all very wet, probably a bit too wet for salt. So this might not be the day for that. Okay, I think I'm going to end it there, guys. If I can piece the videos together, I will continue on with part 2. Otherwise, you will see a completely separate video. If you have watched to this point, I thank you for being with me all this time and keeping me company. And I will see you again really soon. Bye now.